Today we're going to talk about 5 mistakes that I see executors make that can really delay a probate and increase the costs. Hi, I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and I'm one half of the Estate Planning Guys. Now, there are 5 big mistakes that I see executors make that can cause probate to take a lot longer and can increase the cost of probate. So the first one is getting help from friends instead of professionals. So a lot of times folks will think, well, the attorney that did my divorce can probably handle this probate for our family. And the reality is that practice of law has become very specialized, and an attorney who could be a great divorce attorney and really know what he's doing or she's doing in front of the judges and with the law in a divorce case may not know very much about probate at all. It's very difficult to keep up to speed on all these different areas because it changes all the time. The laws change and the way that the courts interpret the laws change. So it's important to hire a professional who works in the probate area to assist you with the probate, or it could wind up that mistakes are made that end up costing more money than what it would have cost to just hire a probate professional in the first place. The second big mistake that I see executors make is a failure to communicate. So oftentimes executors will not return phone calls or give any information to the beneficiaries about the status of the probate matter. And that understandably leads to some distrust. I get calls sometimes from folks who say, well, my brother's the executor of my estate and he hasn't told me anything, or my sister's handling the probate of my mother's estate and she won't even return my phone call, so I have no idea what's going on. It may be that everything is fine, but that failure to communicate leaves a gap in the information, and the beneficiaries will fill that gap with assumptions about what's going on. So it's important for the executor to remain in not constant, but to remain in communication with the beneficiary so that they know what's going on and they're kept abreast of developments in the probate case. The next big mistake that I see executors make is failing to account for all assets. Now, I had a client some years ago who passed away, and we began the probate of his estate. We got an executor appointed, we got things pretty well wrapped up, and then around that time the executor came to us and said, hey, I just located a bunch of stock certificates that I didn't know anything about. They were in a drawer at this client's house and we didn't go through everything, so we didn't know they were there. And it turned out that these stock certificates were worth about $500,000, so it was a significant asset that had just been overlooked. So it's important when you are serving as the executor that the first thing you do is that you make sure that you're accounting for all of the assets that were owned by the deceased. We need to get a complete list of those assets, contact information, values, and that sort of thing. The values are very important too for us to determine what the overall value of the estate is and to be able to advise our client on whether an estate tax return needs to be filed or if we want to take advantage of the portability filing of a tax return. So it's very important that you account for all of the assets. So do a very thorough search to find all of the assets of the deceased. The next big mistake that I see executors make is failing to keep good records. Now, like I mentioned earlier with the communication aspect, if you don't have good records about the receipts and expenses of the estate, it could be a problem with the court. In some states, you have to report that information to the court. Other states don't require that. But if the beneficiaries don't know what you've spent money on, if you've maybe had to hire an appraiser to do an appraisal of mom and dad's residence, for example, and you didn't keep track of what you spent, you don't have receipts, that understandably can lead to some distrust. And I've seen this sort of thing really destroy relationships for a family. So it's important that you keep good records. You can use a spreadsheet to do that. You can use an old-fashioned paper ledger. You could use QuickBooks to do that. You could use Quicken. Myriad of ways that you can keep good records on the receipts of the estate and the expenditures of the estate. Now, the 5th big mistake that I see executors make is not setting up an estate account for the estate once the probate has been filed and they've been appointed as the executor. There's a responsibility for the executor to open an estate account and deposit any funds that are received on behalf of the estate into that estate account so that everybody knows where it is and it's protected by the bond if there is one, but that those are separate assets from the executor's assets. And we see from time to time executors will just open up an account that's in their name and they'll deposit estate assets into it. That's a big no-no. So the executor needs to make sure to set up a separate estate account with a tax identification number that has been requested for the estate specifically in order to keep those assets separate from their own. So those are 5 big mistakes that I've seen executors make. If you need help with your probate, get in touch with Smith Barid. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then take a moment right now to subscribe by clicking below and turn on the bell notification so you get notified every time we post up a new video. Right now we're posting 3 videos a week with lots of information about various estate planning topics, so you're going to want to make sure to stay on top of that. Click below to subscribe and click right over here to watch the next most relevant video about estate planning. Go watch it now.